What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. In today's episode, we're back in our office slash houseplant room because there's not a whole lot going on in our grow room and it's still way too cold to go outside. So I had a question that came up when we were talking about how to create your own DIY cactus mix for kind of like desert loving plants. And the question was in regards to houseplants and that they have an easier time keeping their garden alive outside than they do houseplants alive inside. And they just wanted to kind of hear some of my tips and tricks to keeping them alive. So I thought in this episode, let's go through the 5 most common reasons people kill their houseplants. Now, there are a lot of reasons why houseplants can die, but I've kind of narrowed it down to my top 5 because you all seem to like those kind of top 5 videos. And also I've killed a lot of plants. So I definitely have learned from my experiences. So with that being said, let's jump on into today's video with the first reason why most houseplants die, and that is overwatering. Now, when you're out in the garden, you have to water typically like once a week or so, or if you live in like a really dry climate, you might water every other day, like 2 times a week, 3 times a week. Now, for houseplants, that's not the case. They have a container, right? So they're in a pot. The pot does not wick water out because it's, it is like a barrier. And so because it does not wick water, it holds water in. Also, because we're inside, there's not as much sunlight, there's not as much heat, there's not as much wind. Those contributing factors really reduce how much evaporation occurs. And so because of that, you don't have to water your plants as much. Now, the second kind of part 2 to overwatering is that a lot of times your potting mix is it's a lot finer, right? So in the garden we have a lot more coarse chunks and things drain a whole lot faster in like a raised bed mix than they do like an indoor houseplant container mix. And that's because primarily what you're working with is either coconut husk fiber or sphagnum peat moss. That's also why when you're growing seedlings, quick little tip for growing seedlings as well, when you're growing seedlings, you don't have to water as frequently, and dampening off, which kills off seedlings, is also a common reason why your houseplants suffer from root rot. It's because the sphagnum peat moss just holds on to so much more moisture than like just a raised bed mix with compost and sand, and there's different grades. There's fine, there's coarse, there's everything in between. Typically these potting mixes are very, very fine. So they're gonna hold on to a lot more moisture as well, just because they have more surface area. So overwatering is a big thing. Now, how do you prevent overwatering? Well, I just don't want to give you a reason why they die. I want to kind of give you a fix to it as well. When you're looking at watering, like the type of plant that I look at is it a succulent? Is it a palm? What type of species is it, right? If it's a succulent, succulents are biologically geared to store water in their leaves. So if the leaves have kind of a glossy, plump look to them, if they look abnormally thick, they are usually a succulent. And so they are geared to store water in their leaves and their stems just based on where they grow. Those ones are going to need far less water than, say, obviously the elephant in the room is our coffee tree. This goes through water like crazy. It is a tropical plant. It does like the rainforest. It receives tons of water. And also the fact it's not a succulent and it is a fully grown tree and it also is fruiting. All those things, if you have like any citrus, like little like containers of oranges or limes, those container citrus, we used to have some as well, and then they had spider mites and unfortunately went to the garden in the sky. But the fruiting plants like that need a lot of water. So they're going to be watered probably once a week or so. And you're going to want to water those a lot more frequently, even though they're inside, right? So just kind of knowing the plants you're working with and the types that they are, and just kind of knowing that kind of water schedule really can help to prevent overwatering. The second most common reason why houseplants die on you is because you're over-fertilizing. Now, if you are fertilizing, you'll realize that houseplants do not use as much fertilizer as garden plants do. And so plants like tomatoes, peppers, squashes, and pumpkins, they use so much fertilizer that you think, okay, well, this is a plant, they're a plant, apples to apples comparison, right? Totally wrong. These are growing so much slower, and because they're growing so much slower, they don't need as much fertilizer. One of the biggest reasons why these houseplants die is not because they have fertilizer, it's just because they have too much. And when you have too much fertilizer and it's locked inside this pot here and it can't go anywhere, the roots can actually get burned. Even with a gentle fertilizer, a gentle all-purpose concentrated fertilizer will sometimes burn the roots. The first thing you'll notice, because we actually accidentally over-fertilized this, is that the plant looks extremely healthy, extremely healthy. However, some of the older growth starts to curl. And the reason why it starts to curl is because the plant is actually trying to uptake the nutrients. It's trying to uptake the fertilizer to continue to grow, but there's nowhere to put it. Because typically fertilizer is nutrients, and the nutrients go to fuel either new growth or new fruit or new roots. And if the plant is not growing fast enough, well, where does it put it? Well, it puts it in old growth. And so what will happen is the leaves will actually start to kind of furl up or curl down. And when you see that and the growth is very healthy, you're usually over fertilizing, because too much leaf curl can actually cause the plant to either start to lose root mass, or it'll start to drop leaves. So you don't want to do that. That is a very common problem. And again, it's just because, you're used to gardening outside and you take that knowledge inside, and the two don't always correlate. So what I like to do is I like to always err on the side of being lighter than heavier. The plant will tell you if it needs more fertilizer. If it starts to turn yellow or it really slows down growth altogether, those are common signs that the plant needs some fertilizer. So you can always add a little bit more fertilizer. It's like my mom used to teach me when we were making bread. She said, Luke, you can always add more flour, but you can't take water out. And so it's just kind of a reference that I always look to with fertilizing is you can always add a little bit more fertilizer, but once the fertilizer is in the soil, it's pretty hard to take out. So that's the second reason. The third reason why your plants typically die is the pot is too small. So this pot here, we just got this from the plant orphanage, and this pot is far too small for this size of plant. How you can tell is if you pull this plant up, it is completely root bound. Now, I don't want to make a mess here, but the roots are completely encompassing this root ball here. That's why I was able to pull it out so easily. It could use a tad bit of water as well, but it is very, very root bound. And when your plant is root bound, it causes a lot of stress. Same thing with if you're growing container plants, vegetable plants, any type of plant, it'll get root bound. And when that happens, the roots have nowhere to go and the plant wants to continue to grow. But there's a direct correlation to how much growth can be sustained above based on how much root mass is down below. And so if the plant cannot produce any more roots, it actually sends a chemical signal to stop growth up above. And when that happens, you'll typically see lower leaves start to kind of shrivel, turn yellow, and die, because it has to drop leaves in order to fuel future growth, right? But then if there's no other soil down there, that means less water uptake, less nutrient uptake, there's just less of it. And so the best way to combat that is just to repot. Going up a pot size, so if this was, I believe this is like an 8-inch pot, or maybe a 6-inch pot. If this was a 6-inch pot, I would go up to an 8-inch pot. If it was an 8-inch pot, I would go up to a 10-inch pot. Going up 2 inches in diameter is typically only recommended for houseplants. And that's because, again, they grow much slower and they don't need that much more space to continue growing. So it's typically recommended only 2 inches, because that leads me to the fourth reason why plants typically die, and that's too big of a pot. And the reason why goes back to watering. In too big of a pot, you have too much soil, and too much soil, being very fine, loose, very porous soil, that can hold on to too much water. So there actually should be kind of a right ratio of root mass to available soil to uptake. So if you just take like a 3-inch or a 4-inch plant or root ball and you move it into like a 12-inch pot, sometimes there can be way too much soil there and you can end up killing it. Prime example is citrus. Citrus do not like it, especially if you're growing them indoors. They do not like being uppotted too large. They actually like to be more cramped than have a lot more space. And that's because they're very prone to root rot. Same thing with any of these plants. When you have a plant that grows a whole lot slower, you don't need to give them a ton of space. So that's the fourth reason, is you're just moving them too big too fast. And the fifth reason is not enough sunlight. Now, just because they're houseplants does not mean they don't need sunlight. Now, true, houseplants do not need as much sun as garden plants do. Things like tomatoes and peppers need 5 to 8 hours of sun. But houseplants, they can get by with about 3 to 4 hours of sunlight. And that's because biologically they're geared a little differently than a tomato or a pepper. Now, you can turn tomatoes and peppers into houseplants. If you have a bright enough window with enough sunlight, you totally can grow things like lettuce, tomatoes, and herbs in a windowsill, no problem at all. However, most people don't have that much sunlight, and so they just assume that anywhere in the house is going to be good for a houseplant. And the issue is that while you don't have 3 to 4 hours, or while you don't have 5 to 7 hours, I should say, you need at least 3 to 4 hours. And that's because when you're growing plants indoors, they rarely have direct sunlight, right? Direct sunlight is if you can, and you shouldn't ever stare into the sun, but if you could look at the sun, could you see it? That is direct sun. And that's because the plants have the ability to uptake light energy. And you can imagine the surface of the leaf like your eyeball, right? These plants want to look into the sun. They want to stare directly into the sun. We don't need to stare directly into the sun, and it's not recommended that you do so. And so these plants need to stare directly into the sun for at least 3 to 4 hours. And so if you don't have that, what you get is what's called filtered light. Now, filtered light is anything that is not direct, but is light enough for you to be able to read a newspaper. Filtered light, if it is 100% filtered, so let's say light is coming through a window, but you can never see the sun at all, you can grow a plant there, but you need at least 5 to 7 hours of filtered light. Or you need at least 2 hours of direct light and 3 hours of filtered light to make up enough light energy to grow most houseplants. And also, kind of a sixth reason why a lot of plants die, but just something kind of near windows, is a lot of times you have air vents near windows. So in our room, we have this bay window here, and this bay window has 2 vents. Those vents blow very dry air during the winter, and you don't want that dry air blowing up on your plants because it can dehydrate them and cause a lot of stress on your leaves. So if you do have them near your window, my best recommendation is to actually put what's called a dampener. Now, a dampener is just basically like a metal plate, a thin little metal plate that you put over top of your hot air vent. So it actually will absorb the heat from the hot air vent and then disperse it out more evenly. Rather than blowing that hot air up and drying out your leaves, it actually disperses it and uses it as more of a heat sink that releases the heat throughout the day. Now, that's just something to use near your plants. You don't have to use those throughout your whole house, but that dry air is definitely something that if it's by a window, you want to be careful of. So those are the 5 reasons why most houseplants die. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to throw a like up there. Subscribe if you're not yet already, and let's all cross our fingers for some warm weather, because I really have a lot to do out in the garden to get ready for spring. Yes, spring is coming, and I do believe it's going to be coming, sooner than I can expect. It always catches me off guard. So it's almost February, and that means we're going to be starting seeds for our garden in less than a month. So spring is coming, and it's coming fast, and I've got to get the garden ready. So let's cross our fingers for some warm weather, and we'll catch you all in the next episode. All right, take care, everyone. Grow big or go home.